is Lois Hostetler. I'm the Managing Director of Clinical Services. So I oversee all of clinical services for the agency. So that includes, basically it's treatment staff. So I work with case managers, treatment managers, clinicians, cognitive behavioral specialists, substance abuse counselors, so the treatment type positions mainly. I don't get to see CRSs nearly as much, although I do come sometimes to staff meetings and do suicide training on our suicide policy. So you guys may see me there, but I spend more time on the other side, the treatment part. Well, we're going to talk about my favorite topic this morning, which is client programming. So we're going to do a couple of different things in the core correctional practices this morning. We are going to talk about, you know, I didn't bring my glasses down here. Can we pause for a minute? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you want your glasses?
Yeah, I need my glasses. I forget some of the print is small. Got it? All right, let's go ahead and move forward. Our agenda for this morning, we're going to talk about evidence-based correctional programming. We're going to just briefly talk about House Bill 86 and the Ohio Risk Assessment System. We're going to do an introduction to core correctional practices. I'll tell you, we could spend an entire day on this, or even 2 days on this, so this will be a crash course. I'll just warn you about that, but it gives you an overview. We obviously can't cover everything in orientation. We know you're getting a lot of information, so this gives us an opportunity to give you a basic introduction. We do some extra trainings throughout the year on changing offender behavior, and this is one of those that we sometimes will give extra training to. So pay attention. You can sign up for that. You'll have extra training opportunities, and that's something that you can sign up for. Principles of effective interventions, and then cognitive behavioral programs at ALVIS. We want you to know a little bit about what we do here specifically. So when clients come to you and say, I got group today, what is this all about? You'll know what they're talking about. So evidence-based correctional programming. So what is evidence-based programming? Any ideas? See, I know it's morning. I'm going to put you on the spot. No ideas? Mr. Toledo, how about you? Any idea evidence-based programming? Not this morning?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a hint then. It means that it's based on research. So we're talking about programs that have been proven to be effective based on research. And by research, I'm talking about the kind of research that you think of as research. It has double-blind studies sometimes. It looks at, sometimes it has a control group. It's something that's based on data. And this is something that we have done as an agency. We have prioritized research-based programs for as long as I know. This is actually my second time at ALVIS House. I've been here a total of 10 years this time and 3 years previously. And so 15 years ago when I came here, this was something that's important. As of today in 2016, it's even more important than it was back then. What we want to make sure that we're doing is something that's going to be effective. If you look around in corrections, you know, some of you guys have criminology degrees or psychology. You've read about some of these correctional practices. There are lots of nice, warm, fuzzy programs that we could be doing. We could spend a lot of money, a lot of time on these programs, but what we want to do is make sure that we're picking the ones that are the most effective. And when I'm talking about effective, I mean the ones that reduce recidivism, because that's our goal. Our goal is to make sure that our clients don't come back to us again. If we could put ourselves out of business, I'd be happy. We could all find some other field to work in. We're never going to put ourselves out of business, but it's something that we can always strive for. So we're going to base as many things as we possibly can on research. So you're going to hear that as an emphasis as we go through this morning and as we go through and we observe different kinds of programming that we offer here at ALVIS. So we had an opportunity about 4 years ago now to work with the University of Cincinnati. We picked 3 of our facilities. They were selected by the state, and we went through a 15-month process with the University of Cincinnati. It was a mentoring process, so they came in, they brought a team of their staff in. We pulled a team together of our staff, from CRSs to management staff to clinical staff to a wide variety. And so then we led this team. We met 1 week with the University of Cincinnati staff. The next week we met with our internal staff. So they gave us assignments. We worked on them on the weeks where they were not with us. We brought them back the next week, and this went on for 15 months. During that time, we took all the programming that we had, stopped it, built it up from scratch, from the bottom up, based on research. Not that what we'd been doing before was not based on research, but we updated it based on new research. So this was something that was very important, and in terms of programming, life changed. We're going to talk about dosage a little bit later, but just to give you an idea of some of the things that changed, our equip programming used to be 1 hour a week for 12 weeks, so 12 hours of treatment. Right now we do 5 to 7 hours a week for 15 weeks. So that gives you an idea of what the difference is. So when I'm talking about overhauling our program, I mean overhauling our program, starting from scratch and building it back up again. So we are now in the stage of what I call program fidelity. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are delivering the services that we were set up to do. So what we said when we overhauled the program is going to happen and happens correctly. So that's why we have a continuous quality improvement department. That's why our management staff do observations of case managers. So you'll be observed as a case manager, all of our COG staff, and also our CRSs. Because the CRS position is very, very important. One of the things that we learned is that you guys have more interaction with the clients than anybody else. So you need to understand how important your role is. It's important for clients to go to a group and to participate in that group, but when they leave, there's 23 hours in the day that are outside of that group. So all of the interactions that you have, no matter what position you're in, is very important. Same thing is true with case managers. We do exit surveys when clients complete the program. The number one thing that they cite as being the most helpful to them is their case manager. So they cite other things too. Sometimes they cite management, sometimes they cite CRSs. It's a little bit over, it depends on the facility, depends on the staff. But the one theme that runs through is the case manager. So you have a basic instinct as a case manager and a big platform for being able to help clients. So keep that in mind, all of you. Everyone in this room right now in video land has a very important job, and it takes all of us coming together and focusing on these important pieces for change to happen. So House Bill 86, there's a couple things that took place in it, and I'm going to kind of skim through those. House Bill 86 happened about 4 or 5 years ago now, and it's often called sentencing reform. So there are a number of different things that came about through that. One of the things that's probably the most common had to do with the crack cocaine versus powder cocaine, a leveling of that. You may have read about that. In the last year or so, there have been changes on the federal level to even that out. That was a huge thing, and Ohio was ahead of the curve. That's one of the things I want to emphasize. It may shock you guys to know Ohio is near the top of the heap and is known nationally and internationally for being a leader in corrections. Anyone have an idea what the national recidivism rate is?
Like 47%.
Real close, yeah. I mean, it varies based on study, but like 44 to 47%, right in there. Anyone get an idea what Ohio's recidivism rate is? 27.5. That's almost half the average of the national average. So that tells you something. Ohio's doing something right. Every time I go to a national conference or an international conference, people flock to me as soon as they hear we're from Ohio. They say, what are you guys doing? We hear you're doing some really cool things. Tell us what you're doing. We want to learn from you. We get calls all the time. Our president gets calls. We get calls as management staff. It's really important to understand you're really part of a top-notch, prestigious state in terms of particularly community corrections. Corrections in particular, but community corrections specifically. And one of the reasons is that we know based on research that community corrections, so organizations like our halfway houses and our non-residential services, are more effective than prisons, and they're cheaper. So why not use them? They're research-based, they're cheaper, makes everybody happy. Democrats are happy, Republicans are happy, it meets different kinds of goals. There's a lot of progress that's been made federally as well as on the state level because it can meet a variety of people's goals of what they're trying to accomplish. So we've had a lot of changes in the last 30 years or so, and a lot of it's been based on evidence-based practices, and a lot of it's been based on community corrections. So I think it's pretty cool. And you guys now are part of this. So one of the other big things that was developed, it was mandated that there was a single risk assessment that was developed. So let me tell you what I mean by risk assessment. Risk assessment means how likely someone is to recidivate again. So get into trouble with the law in the future. That's all it does. It doesn't say how scary the crime was. It doesn't say how old the person was. What it says is how likely, from a statistical, research-based perspective, are they likely to get in trouble with the law again? That's real significant to understand, and we'll talk about some of the key things that make up how we know what the risk level is, but it's important to understand what risk is. So before the standardized risk assessment, everyone kind of used their own version of a risk assessment tool. So this was pretty revolutionary. We were the first in the country, as far as I know, that were ever doing this. So the state mandated that we were going to come up with one risk assessment tool, and it would be used for everybody within the criminal justice system. That was big. So the state contracted with the University of Cincinnati to develop an evidence-based risk assessment that was normed on Ohio offenders. So we looked specifically at clients, individuals in the justice system in Ohio, because we wanted it to be as accurate as possible. So they developed this something called the ORAS, the Ohio Risk Assessment System. And it was a standardized assessment. There is a 2-day class that individuals go through, and then there's a test at the end, and once they're certified, then they are eligible to take to deliver the ORAS to clients and to have access to the ORAS portal, which we'll get to in just a little bit. So at Alvis, our case managers and our treatment managers do the primary piece of doing the ORAS. Every facility is a little bit different in terms of that, so it kind of varies based on staff available at each facility, but it's treatment staff that complete the ORAS. So this meant, though, that all parts of the criminal justice system were involved. So everything from pretrial to probation to halfway house to prison to parole, everyone had the same information. So what we know, and I'll just warn you, the next number of slides I skip between them. So don't try to follow for the next half a dozen slides, okay? You'll get frustrated if you do. What we know is, when everyone was doing their own risk assessment, there was a lot of overlap. It was very expensive because everyone was paying for their own risk assessments. There was a lot of duplicate information, so we kept asking those poor clients the same questions over and over again. We sometimes came out with different answers because some assessments dictated one thing, some assessments looked at something else, so they came out with a different result. So someone may be low on one tool and high on another tool. So it very much varied based on the research behind the assessment tool. So this was pretty revolutionary to come up with one tool. It's consistent across all of the areas of the state in terms of the criminal justice system, and it's something that was, again, based on Ohio offenders. So just a side note, something I find interesting. The ORAS was noted as across the state and internationally as being such a kind of cool, revolutionary thing that the University of Cincinnati was contacted and they were asked to let them use the ORAS in different states across the country. Now what they've mostly done is they've gone on and adapted it and done their own research and adapted it to their state. And they call it other things. I can't remember the different states right now, but there were at least probably half a dozen states that also use it. But it just tells you something. Started in Ohio, rolled out big, everybody heard about it and wanted to replicate it. So pretty cool. So what we found then is that if we had a unified tool, it saved a lot of money, it saved expense, it saved clients from having to go through the process again. It was consistent, because what we know also is every piece of the criminal justice system fits together, and we need to work together. We're serving the same clients. We need to make sure that we're doing things as effectively and efficiently as possible. Our bottom line is public safety and making sure our clients don't come back again. That's always our goal. Okay, so one of the questions that we always get, so how do you know what, is it random? Can't be random, right? Because I told you it's based on evidence. So what are the ways that we know that an individual is going to test out at a different level of risk? So if you look, and I will follow the slides pretty much from now on. Back on track. ORAS domains. It's the last one on the bottom right. So the ORAS domains are criminal history, education, employment, and financial support, family and social support, neighborhood problems, substance use, peer association, and criminal attitudes and behavioral patterns. All right, if I was a singer, which I'm not, I'd sing the Sesame Street song. One of these things is not like the other. You guys remember that? Anyway, one of these things is not like the others. Any idea which one sticks out and is different than the rest of them?
Family and social support.
No. Behavior problem? No.
Criminal history.
Criminal history! Ding, 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 ding! Criminal history is what we call a static factor. It doesn't change. If someone comes into our program with 23 felony offenses, they're going to leave our program with 23 felony offenses. Hopefully no more, but 23. That doesn't change. You can throw all the programming you want at them, no matter how good you are with what you're going to offer them, they're still going to come out and their criminal history is still going to be the same. So if you're looking at what kind of programming to target, why spend your time and energy on something that you can't change? The rest of these factors are what we call dynamic factors. These are things that can change. And so those are the ones that we're going to focus on. Okay? We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But those are important ones to look at. So what we know then is we're going to look at the different domains, and then we're going to come up with a score. There's actually two scores. One of them is by domain, so you can score low, moderate, or high in each domain, and then you get an overall score. We mainly look at the overall score, but when we're case planning, which is what the case managers do, they're going to look at what kind of treatment programs based on overall risk score as well as individual domains. Okay? So, any questions about domains? Because that one is something that sometimes people have a hard time grasping. We cool on that? Okay, so let's move on then. So, we want to provide programming. How do we know what we're going to provide programming on? We're going to look, I know you're going to be surprised I'm going to say this, based on evidence, what are we going to focus on? Well, they went back and looked at, and by they I'm saying dozens and dozens of researchers. I'm not saying there's one person at Podunk University who took a look at a study and said this is what we're going to do. I'm talking about decades worth of research by countless different researchers establishing things. So what they did, they looked at programs that were effective and they looked at programs that were ineffective. And by effective I mean they reduce recidivism. Right, so that's an effective program. And they discovered that there were some things that were the same in effective programming. What they found is that effective programs were based on three things: risk, need, and responsivity. So let's talk about these in the order that we come up with. So first is the risk principle. Who? So who are we going to target? What we know then is that we are going to look at individuals who need our programs most. So we're going to identify higher risk individuals, okay? And by higher risk, I'm going to divide out, for the sake of argument here, low risk individuals and then group together moderate and high risk. So lower or higher risk, okay? Because what we know is this: for an intensive program, for example, a halfway house, we know that if you take a low risk individual and put them in an intensive program like a halfway house, they're almost twice as likely to get into trouble in the future. Yes, we make them worse. So, why do we want a low-risk person in a halfway house? Not a good idea, huh? Okay. But what we know is if you take a high-risk individual and put them in a halfway house, they're almost twice as likely to stay out of trouble in the future. So, who do we want to have in our halfway houses? High-risk individuals. Good. So the state looked at this a number of years ago. Based on this, they started referring primarily moderate to high-risk individuals to our programs because they're the ones that have the best chance for success. I do want to add a caveat here. Nobody, you guys have a Fed facility up in Toledo for right now. You have a short time with that Fed, but nobody else is at Allen Creek. Somebody's at Dunning, right? Dunning. You guys have a couple of Fed women there, usually 5 to 6 at a time. So this applies to you. The Federal Bureau of Prisons, who oversees our federal contract, says that we can use the ORAS, but it doesn't go in the portal, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But they don't really care whether they're low risk or not. So we get a lot of feds that are low risk. By nature of the type of crimes that are committed, federal clients tend to be on the lower risk anyway. The feds, though, make a determination based on their own research, and they basically put everybody in a halfway house. It's just what they do. It's part of our contract that we keep them if they mandate that they need to be in a halfway house, but it's something that flies in the face of evidence. So the feds, as you'll learn, move around a little bit slower. So Ohio is known as a leader. We've actually been called on by the Federal Bureau of Prisons as a state to help guide some new principles. So we expect within the next year or two that we are going to have some significant changes. And one of the things that they're going to look at is based on risk. So right now they tell us across the board who we take. They tell us across the board what programming that they participate in, and don't let us make those decisions. But we're optimistic that they're going to make those changes within the next upcoming time. So the other area that we sometimes get more low-risk individuals is, you'll see this, have you guys talked at all about transitional control? I think that might be later today. Transitional control is a legal status that is with the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, so the state prison system, that allows individuals to serve up to the last 6 months of their sentence in the community. So they come out into the halfway house. They're mandated to come out to a halfway house. And then if they're low risk, they can go out very quickly on electronic monitoring. If they're moderate or high risk in their TC, they have to complete all their programming first. And then if there's still time on their sentence, they can go out on electronic monitoring. So because it's mandated that they come out to a halfway house program, we do take low risk individuals. And there are a fair number of them. So I have one other thing. My PowerPoint hasn't been updated yet. This is hot off the presses. Treatment transfer. Anybody read about this? It's been in the paper a couple of times, but you might not have heard. It's been kind of under the radar. In the mid-biennium budget last year, there was something passed that was called treatment transfer. Caught everybody in the field off guard. A legislature and the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections director came up with this. The reason it came up with it is because they really need to limit the number of individuals in prison. Our prison has been operating, our state prison system, at about 138% of capacity for quite some time now. You can imagine what happens when you shove too many people into a prison. It's not good. So they're doing some things, initiatives and things in place right now. The last year has been better, but prior to that, in the last 5 or so years when it was that high of a percentage, they were finding that the number of assaults, both on inmate to inmate as well as inmate to staff, had just skyrocketed. So that makes sense. You put too many people in a close environment and bad things are going to happen. So they've tried a couple different things to get the rates down in the prison, but none of them have worked very effectively. So right now we have about 51,000 individuals in the prison system, in the state system. So the latest thing is called treatment transfer. Treatment transfer is for individuals with substance abuse disorders who are in prison and are serving either a 12-month or less sentence, so maybe they came in with a 6-month sentence, or they served a longer sentence and they're down under 12 months to go. So it's called transfer because even though it has a lot of similarities to transitional control, for example, both legal classifications, they're on inmate status, okay? So that's pretty serious. They're on inmate status, so if they would escape our facility, it'd just be like if they ran away from prison. So it's a big deal. But one of the differences is that they are also not a difference, a similarity is that they also are gonna be a number of low-risk individuals. So they're gonna come out to a halfway house and they need to participate in a substance abuse intensive outpatient program. Ours is gonna be about 8 weeks in length. So the reason I say this is hot off the presses is because I literally this morning got an email telling me for the first time when our first treatment transfer clients are coming, and it's in the next couple of weeks. So that's as new and as fresh that you can possibly know. We will be getting them primarily at Jackson Pike, a couple years from Jackson Pike, and at TCRC, which is our facility down in Chillicothe. The women also on Bryden Road, we're looking at opening a third facility, and the treatment transfer clients will go there. In the meantime, they're going to be split between Price and Dunning. So you're going to be seeing them in those locations pretty quickly. So it's pretty exciting stuff. It's definitely something that we're going to see a lot of attention paid to because the difference that between transitional control and treatment transfer, though, is that treatment transfer is considered a transfer. And transitional control is something that has to be approved by a judge. So what we found across the state is that there are some judges who hate transitional control and turn it down every time a client applies. There are some judges who are on the other end of the spectrum who will allow just about anybody to go through. And then there's a number that are in between. Judges tend to have a pretty strong opinion about transitional control, so it tends to be more one extreme or the other. But it makes the system hard when, for example, up in Cleveland, when there's a couple judges who absolutely don't want to have anybody come out. But the point is, there's a judge's discretion. Treatment transfer is a transfer. It's just like the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction was transferring them from one prison to another. They're just transferring them to the community, to us. So this is something that's very new and very significant because these individuals are coming and the judges don't have any veto power over them. They still have to meet a long list of criteria. They can't be violent. There's a long list of criteria, even longer, in fact, than transitional control, because they want to make sure that since we're transferring people to the community, that our number one goal, which I've talked about a couple times, is public safety. So we want to make sure that we're getting the right clients there. So that's going to be something that's going to be coming about just in the next little bit.
Will this work like TDAT or RDAP in that if they miss their programming, they'll go back to prison?
TDAT and RDAT, for you guys to understand, is for the Federal Bureau of Prisons clients who have substance abuse needs. If they miss a group, they'll get violations. If they consistently refuse to participate, yes, they'll go back to prison.
Got it.
So it's pretty. Again, because they're on inmate status and it's considered a privilege to be able to do this, they're on a pretty short leash.
Yeah.
So, good question. Have you worked in a Fed facility before?
I just interned at Allen Creek.
Oh, okay. I thought I knew you from
Yeah.
somewhere. That explains it. Yeah, so it's similar, but a little bit different too.
Yeah.
All right, so back to the risk principle, the who. So we already talked about who we want to have in programming. Wanted to mention, I just mentioned about dosage. So dosage is really a kind of a fancy word for treatment hours. So the number of hours that someone's going to participate, particularly in group. It can also be an individual if it meets the same criteria. But that means that it's evidence-based programming, it's cognitive behaviorally based programming, and it has a curriculum. So it needs to be something that's structured. It needs to be something that is designed to be dosage, that's designed to change clients' behavior. So we can't just put anything in as dosage. It's very specific. Because again, we're looking at research. What's it going to take for someone to make a change? Okay, so we established the risk principle, who we're going to work with. Now we're going to look at the needs principle, which is the what. So what are we going to work on? So we're going to look at assessments. So we're going to start with the ORAS. We might do some secondary needs assessments, which are kind of drilled down. So we look at a need, for example, like substance abuse. If someone has a moderate to high risk need in that area, we're going to do a follow-up needs assessment, which is called a Texas Christian University drug screen. Okay? So there's things that we do to get more information for that particular domain. We're going to look at criminogenic targets, because what we know is clients have a lot of needs. Our clients are very complicated and they have a lot of needs. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the ones that are the most important, okay? Number one thing that really affects the clients that we work with is criminal attitudes, values, and beliefs. So the cognitive behavioral programming that we design here is going to target those criminal attitudes, values, and beliefs. The other ones are important, but they're something that we're going to look to base on our priorities based on criminogenic needs. So the ones that specifically reduce recidivism are going to be prioritized over the other ones. We do need to take into consideration the client's priorities. So we need to look at what kinds of things interest them. For example, are they interested in getting their GED? Okay, are they interested in working with establishing better family relationships? So those are things we're going to look at. The bottom line is, though, we're a correctional program, and clients are coming to us so that we can help them stay out of trouble in the future. So they're going to be required, if they're moderate to high risk, to participate in our programming. It's not negotiable. So other things are, but programming is not. And they will receive violations, which we'll talk about in a minute, if they don't participate in programming. I mentioned about dosage. I put the numbers in here. Basically what I would tell you is there are very few studies that actually say exactly how many hours of dosage someone needs to have to stay out of trouble. And then the one other thing that we know is that dosage also relies on a cumulative. So dosage doesn't just happen with us. We can also add in what happens in the prison system, what happens with parole. So it can be cumulative. It doesn't necessarily all have to be done in the halfway house, although we have the most captive audience other than prison. But they have very long waiting lists because their treatment staff are very limited due to cost. So that's just to give you a general idea. For us, though, as I mentioned, different clients, I said 5 to 7 hours of COG programming per week. A moderate risk client is going to have 5 hours a week of programming, and a high risk person is going to have 7 hours a week of COG programming. So those are give you different examples. So a moderate risk is going to have 62 hours, a high risk client 92 hours, and we don't give any COG programming. If we do have a low risk client, we don't give them any COG programming. Because our goal for them is to get them out in the community as quickly as possible. So that's why we don't want to get them trapped into the facility and going to programming. Number one, because we know it's not going to be helpful for them. We know they'll be more effective if we get them in the community and hook them up with resources there. All right, so the responsivity principle. This is one that's a little bit hard to understand. The way I describe it usually is, it talks about barriers. So what are the barriers to helping them, or to keeping them from being involved actively in programming? And I use the example, one of them would be mental health. So if you have a client, for example, that's sitting in a group and is hearing voices, they're gonna have a hard time participating, okay? That's a barrier. So you need to work on removing the barrier, the responsivity factor, helping that client get stable on their mental health, and then they'll be having an easier time making sure that they are able to participate in programming. So those are some examples. We talk a little bit about relationship skills and mandated treatment. What we know is that based on research, people that have, so I'm talking about staff here, everybody in this room, if you are caring and fair, if staff or if clients can trust you, and if you are authoritative, not authoritarian, you're going to get better results. So you can follow risk, need, and responsivity, but if there's no relationship there, it's not going to work, okay? Now I know you sat through an hour, 2 hours of code of ethics. So I'm not telling you that you need to buddy up with clients and give them your cell phone number and all of those. I hope by now you get that all of that is taboo, okay? I'm talking about professional relationships. You can show clients that you care about them while still maintaining your professional boundaries. Your job, honestly, will be easier if you do that. So selfishly, there's something invested. So one, we hope that you're here because you care about clients, but it also will be easier for you. Clients will be more cooperative. If they respect you, if they know that you're going to be fair, that you're going to set boundaries with them, things will go much better for you. So keep those things in mind. So risk, need, responsivity, and we're going to tack in relationship on the end. The thing that I would tell you is, while it's important, a collaborative relationship, so a relationship with clients, is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So if you focus only on the relationship piece, you're gonna have a client that likes you, but it's not gonna be effective. It's not gonna help change their behavior. So they may like you better, but it's not gonna be what they need to make better changes, better choices. Any questions so far before I move on? You guys kind of grasping where we're going with this? Risk, need, responsivity. Does it make pretty much sense? Yeah? Okay. So then let's talk about principles of cognitive behavioral theory. Anybody heard of cog theory? First of all, we've got a couple psych majors, so hopefully you guys have heard a little bit about it. I'll run through what it means. So a definition of behavior. It's an observable action, it's measurable, it's manageable. It's usually something that you can see, okay? That's a behavior. Thinking affects behavior. Thinking can be influenced and changed, and changes in thinking will produce changes in emotion and behavior. So first, if you can help somebody change their thoughts, you can help them change their behavior. So that's a big part of what our programming is based on, helping clients practice changing their thoughts so that they can change their behavior. So we have developed, as part of the University of Cincinnati mentoring program, a behavior management system. This is on the Z drive in the forms folder. If you want to see it, it's about a 30-page document. If you're working on third shift and you have a few minutes and you want to do something, take a look at it. It's pretty interesting, if I say so myself, since I helped write it. But it's something that gives a good summary of a lot of the things that we're talking about this morning. Okay? So a behavior management system is a system that increases desired behaviors through reinforcers and incentives and decreases unwanted behaviors through a menu of appropriate sanctions. Have you guys done violations yet, or is that today? Today or tomorrow? Okay. Violations are when clients break rules. There's a report that's done, and then there's an appropriate sanction that happens. So they might, if they tested positive for drugs, they might lose their cell phone for 2 weeks, or they may have a visitation restricted, or they may not be allowed to go anywhere other than work and programming for 2 weeks. So it'll give you an idea of what kind of sanctions are out there. That's part of the behavior management system. That's giving clients feedback that what they did was not appropriate. Okay? They made a poor choice. And we're going to give them some reminders to help them remember that that's not what they want to do again. Okay? On the positive side, though, we want to give reinforcers. One of the most concrete ways, there's two things that I really want to highlight. One's formal and one's informal. The informal one is what I call targeted verbal praise. Okay? Everybody knows what verbal praise is, right? Give me an example.
Good job.
Good job. Exactly. But if I just did 4 things, and you tell me good job, how do I know which of those 4 things to do again? Because one of the things that we know is our clients don't make very good choices. They don't always understand what is significant and what's pro-social. So you've got a situation where they did 4 things. See if you can come up with an example of how to be more specific.
Good work following up on that interview and getting the job.
Awesome. Okay? So they know then what it is specifically that was important. Okay? This serves a couple of different purposes. Number one, it's a teaching method. Okay? Because you're telling them which of the 4 things that they did a good job with. Number one, remember we go back to that relationship building? This is a perfect example. Clients hear that. They know that it's important enough for you to remember, and it's important enough for you to be highlighted that they got a job and that they worked hard to get that job. So those are things that you can do to kill a couple birds with one stone, is develop relationships as well as to give positive feedback. And that's one of the number one things that I ask as CRSs and case managers that we work on doing is giving targeted verbal praise. It only takes 10 seconds to do. It really does. If you just get in the habit of it, of doing it on a day-to-day basis, it'll flow out of your mouth and you won't even think about it. I'll give you another suggestion, just a little tip. You use that in your personal life and you'll see a difference there too. It's amazing. When you're giving targeted verbal praise to your partner, to your child, to a family member, they're going to also respond. You're developing that same relationship with them. So think about that as you do your interaction. Do some practicing. It may sound kind of awkward at first, but pretty soon it'll come out very naturally. and it'll make a big difference in your interactions with clients. The other thing then that we do, which is on a more formal basis, is we use something called star cards. Has anybody been in a facility yet, or did you guys all start right? So you've been in a facility. Do you know what a star card is? All right, what's a star card?
Basically, like kind of a reward for doing something good.
Yeah, good.
And you might get like a certain privilege or something like that. Maybe like more time out of it.
Okay, so a star card is a form. It's a piece of paper with a big smiley face on it, and it's for staff to come up with, and whenever you deserve, or whenever clients display pro-social behaviors, okay? I will say, I don't expect it every time, but I will tell you this. What we know is based on research. Anyone have an idea how many positives need to take place for every negative in order to change?
5 positives to 1 negative.
We officially have always said 4 for the last number of years, but more recent research has shown that it's more in the 6 to 8 range. So I would definitely take 5 in there, okay? So that tells you something. What that means, though, is the client who needs the most positive feedback is the client who's the biggest pain in the butt. So the more that someone shows antisocial behaviors, the more that we as staff need to do. I'm not saying make anything up, but we need to pay attention. So when those clients who are always screwing things up do something right, we want to do that. We want to resolve that. So what my encouragement to you would be is, every day when you come to work, think of it in your head, what can I do today to catch clients doing something right? Okay? We spend a lot of time catching clients doing something wrong. That's easy to do. It takes a lot more skill to catch clients doing something right. So that should be our mindset when we come in. Gives you an opportunity. It gives you a positive outlook. If you come in thinking, oh, this client's breaking the rule, I'm going to have to do violations again today. Yeah, honestly, that's part of your job. I'll be honest. But if you come in also looking for the positive stuff, it'll make your job a lot more fun. It really will. So what happens then is, at the resident meetings, which happen twice a month, the manager or director, whoever runs the resident meeting at your facility, takes those, all those star cards, and makes a drawing out of them. They pull a couple, depends on what they want, how much money they have, what they've figured out in terms of prizes for the week, or for the 2 weeks, and we'll draw several of them out. And those individuals will get recognition, so the star card will be read to everybody, as well as they get to pick some type of a prize, okay? There are 3 levels of star cards: good, great, and excellent. Anybody can write a star card, okay? Everyone in general is going to write them at the good level, and I'll tell you why. Because what we want to do is we want to save up the things that are really, really good at a higher level. So the case managers are responsible to do the great and the excellence. Those are things like they get their GED. They've been sober for 90 days when they've had lots of positive drug tests before that, okay? So we want to make sure that we're giving at the appropriate level. So every manager or director has a small budget of money that they can be used each month to purchase incentives, as well as then we sometimes get donations. There's other things, so if people sometimes ask if there's things that they can do. Maybe you have a friend who works at an ice cream parlor and would like to donate a couple of gift certificates. To work with your manager or director, one of the things we always make sure is that the clients don't know where they came from. So if they're donated or purchased, so that would be a way of establishing a professional boundary, so they don't know that they came from you. But there's things that you can do to make sure that we're kind of beefing up our program, because then if we can give more incentives, then we'd like to do that. What we know, though, is that it shouldn't be a matter of every time they do something, they get a reward, okay? Based on research, we know that intermittent reinforcement is the most effective. So the first thing they're going to do when they get a star card, it's going to be in the moment, they get reinforcement from you. Then, if it goes to a drawing and they get selected for that, they get an additional layer because they get recognized in front of their peers. And then the third layer is they may or may not get a prize, but it's multi-layered on top of everything that goes to be most effective. Okay, does that make sense? Anyone have questions about that? Sometimes people have questions about how to implement that. I will issue one warning, and this is my number one pet peeve. Actually, there's two pet peeves. Number one is if staff don't write star cards at all. My other number two one is don't write them for cleaning, okay? We're looking for pro-social behaviors. Yes, I get it that it's a pro-social thing, and if they do extra house tasks without working, that's great. That should be the exception, though, rather than the rule, because that's what clients want to do. But let me just tell you, if we're looking to do positive reinforcement for pro-social behavior, that's not going to cut it, is just giving them star cards for doing extra cleaning. We're looking for pro-social behaviors, okay? I spot check those, and I'm telling you, that's the thing that like makes me want to pull my hair out the most. So I appreciate the efforts, but please make sure, go back, and if you see a lot of those come through, you can tell them I learned in orientation that we're trying to look for pro-social behaviors. So that's one of the things I'd like, there's my little soapbox for the day, that we want to do.
I was just gonna say, can you give some examples of a good thing to write a star card for? Like, I don't know, if I see a client encouraging someone else or something, I don't know, what are
No, that's a
some-
perfect example. You see someone helping someone with their homework for group.
Okay.
You see someone who gets all cleaned up to go to some scruffy guy, and he gets all cleaned up to go to a job interview. You see someone who handled something appropriately. A guy who maybe used to get in verbal altercations with staff and clients, have a situation with another client, and they handled it beautifully. And that's something that's unusual for them. Does that give you a couple ideas?
Got it, yeah.
Okay? So those are the types of things that we're looking for. Okay?
I actually have a question, Melissa.
Sure.
How do you feel about star cards being used in a kind of explicitly transactional way? Because when I was at Jackson Pike recently, I saw a lot of good people doing good work. I was really excited to see it all. But one of the things I witnessed was somebody asked a client for a favor to come help me with this thing. And the client said, "Can I get a star card out of that?" And the staff said yes, but also indicated that he would have given that star card anyway. But I'm just curious how you feel about that and whether that's the kind of thing that comes up.
No, that's a perfect question. It should be staff initiated, okay? Because what we want to avoid doing as much as possible. Now, would I say, depending on what it was, would I never say that? But in general, if you're asking them to do something like that, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking to catch them in the moment doing something, because we're trying to bring it to their awareness. Now, yeah, that might be, and would I say you never do that? It's something a little, it would not be my preference.
Kind of on the cleaning side of the spectrum.
It's kind of on the cleaning side of the spectrum. Because it should be a matter of staff have that decision. And again, you're looking at, and you guys can give the example of, we're trying to see pro-social behaviors. Yes, that is one. I think it would depend too on what you're asking them to do.
And not to pontificate too much, but it sounds like, in that moment for the client to say I'm only gonna help you out with this if you give me a star card, that's almost the opposite.
Yes.
It doesn't feel to be pro-social.
Exactly.
To have that reaction.
And that's probably a good gut check to tell you
Yeah.
whether or not it's appropriate or not.
Yeah.
So, no, excellent question. I'm glad that you brought that up. Any other thoughts about that? Either not understanding or questions about what would constitute a star card? Okay. All right, we're going to talk then about programming that we offer here at Alice. So when we say EQUIP is our cognitive behavioral programming that we offer here. EQUIP is actually made up of three things. There's the core EQUIP, which is 3 times a week for 10 weeks. This is where clients learn the basic cognitive behavioral skills. Okay? It's broken down into, it's 3 times a week, so one of those times is anger management, one of them is social skills, and the other is social decision making. So there's 3 different kind of tracks that make up EQUIP. Then there's something called skills practice and advanced practice. There's some role plays that happen in EQUIP, but advanced practice and skills practice are all role plays. What we know based on research is that role plays are what's most effective in helping clients change their behavior. By practicing, by actually getting the words to come out of their mouth, by learning through what to say and what not to say when you're learning about making decisions. Bless you.
Thank you.
That's what's going to be most effective, by practicing it over and over again, and that's what they do in role plays. So you take a situation that you learn in Equip, and this is a basic thing that they learn, or basic task that they learn. Then you're going to take that same skill and take it into advanced or skills practice. So they're going to learn to role play in what we call a cold situation. So the facilitator, who's usually a cognitive behavioral specialist, takes the situation and has two clients come up and role plays the situation. But it's kind of calm, you're giving feedback, it's moving pretty slowly. It's a way to practice, but there's a lot of staff intervention to try to make sure that we're giving a lot of feedback. Then we take it the next step, which is an advanced practice. So again, what we do in this situation is clients bring their own examples. This is a real life thing. Yeah, this happened at work yesterday, okay? And it's what we call a hot situation. So they're doing the same kind of role plays back and forth, but things get hot and heavy. This is how real life really is. This happened yesterday in the halfway house. This is what happened with my baby mama. These are real life examples of what's going on. So they've already taken it, they've learned the skill, they practice it in a calm situation, and now then they have a real life situation. So we're hoping that they've learned the process of going through. And there's a step-by-step process that they learn the steps. One of them you'll see is this: stop and think, okay? And I tell you that because every now and then, when I'm in a facility, I'll see a staff person interact just in the hallway with something, and I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a client go like this. They don't realize they're doing it, but it's a way for them, they're showing you that they're stopping and thinking, okay? So it tells you something. I'd encourage you, if you have interest in learning a little bit more about this, talk to your supervisor as part of your on-the-job checklist. Ask if you can sit in and observe a cognitive behavioral group, okay? They're very enlightening. It's not closed door, it's not confident, you're welcome to attend. Just ask if you can attend. It's 1 hour. Sit in, preferably with an experienced facilitator, and see what it's like. It's a unique opportunity. Okay, so that's the core part of Equip. The other piece of our cognitive behavioral programming is our substance abuse programming. This is, again, a curriculum that's developed by the University of Cincinnati, and it's very similar in a lot of ways to our Equip program, with the situations being substance use scenarios. So they're learning a lot of the same techniques and things, and it really builds on our cognitive behavioral programming in our Equip program. So it kind of builds on learning to make pro-social decisions. It kind of builds on helping clients to associate with more positive and pro-social peers. It helps them learn what to do when they come up across peers that they have known to be antisocial in the past. They practice all of this with substance abuse examples. So that gives you an example how the programming fits together. Okay? Any questions about the programming that we offer? It's a lot of programming. If you stop and think about it, the substance abuse program is twice a week or 3 times a week, depending on the facility, but it's an hour and a half long. So by the time you add up all the different programming, if it's 3 times a week, that's, I always forget, 4.5 hours. Plus, if you're high risk, you're going to be in 7 hours of programming. That's almost 12 hours a week of group. So you have to be pretty creative to get a work schedule and get all of your house tasks done and all of that. So that's a big thing that we work on is time management. But it's very important, and we try to prioritize programming. We want to make sure that clients, we know that, for example, that if clients can get a job, but if they don't have the cognitive behavioral programming and make the pro-social choices, they're going to lose that job. It's going to take them 2 days before they haul off and pop somebody, or they get in an argument with their boss, okay? So we need to make sure that we're doing our best to give them the best possible way to get going on it. Most of our facilities hold clients in the house, in the facility, for 30 days before they go out job seeking, okay? The reason for that is we want them to get involved in programming, to get a head start on the programming, and then, this is not the feds.
Right, yeah.
The feds are a whole other thing. You get 15 days, they don't care about the programming, you gotta get a job.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the state clients, because that's mostly what we have. Because we want them also to get in the habit of going to group. You know, we learned, again, based on research, that it takes about 30 days for clients, or for us, to learn a good habit. If you do it repetitively, you'll learn it and it gets into your system, okay? We want clients to get into the habit of going to group and actively participating before they're gonna add something like employment, okay? That's the end of my talk. Do any of you have questions about anything related to programming? Either I talked about it or something that I didn't talk about, because there are lots of things that I wasn't able to cover this morning. All right, well, thank you for your attention, all of you. I enjoyed getting to know you guys a little bit better. I look forward to seeing you in the facilities when I'm out and about. And again, we're really happy to have you here at Abbas.
Thank you.
Thank you.